Can someone click on our Zoom link and test? Period. Don and I are here, and we are live on Zoom. Did you see Steve Cox's mom? That's it.
No, I didn't.
Share. Is that the right one? Scale. Share. Okay, we're going to get started in just a few moments here. We're about a minute early. Well, hello. Can you hear us, Lexi? Oh, she's going to unmute herself there. Can you hear us now?
No, can't
We
hear.
can't hear you. Can you talk?
Yeah, I am.
There you are.
Okay, I'm like, yeah, I'm not muted.
Okay, cool.
Well, it's just us. I'm going to send you all of these documents later so you can put them wherever you want to put them.
Okay, awesome.
Okay?
Is that all you need?
Yeah, try chatting real quick. I want to show him how that works.
Okay, so down at the bottom, you'll see the little chat box.
Did you type a chat? Okay.
Yeah, I did. And I made it to everyone, but you can also change it to just where the host just sees it too.
Okay, so it's not showing up here.
That's weird. Should.
Move that down to the corner or
I'll
something.
move it right there. That way you can see things still.
Okay.
That makes sense?
When you click on chat, what does it do?
Now I can see it, but I can't. It didn't notify me that there was a chat. If that makes sense.
Oh, gotcha.
So I had to go up here and look.
Yeah, Nicole, it doesn't notify you. You just have to kind of watch for them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Don.
All right, sweet.
So when you're done, just click at the top and hover over the right-hand side.
Yeah. I need a bigger TV here.
Yeah, go up to the.
Did you
You're
share?
recording this, right?
You go to the far right. And then go to the very bottom and hit end meeting, and that's how you'll end it. Don't do that now, but that's how you'll end it. And then I showed him how to.
To make sure it's recording.
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
So yeah, like if you want to, when you first log on while you're getting it set up, if you want to, you can stop recording for that time being and then start recording when you want it to start recording.
Cool.
But it's recording right now, yes?
Yep.
Yes. So if you got on like 15 minutes early just to make sure that you've got it all figured out and everything, you could hit stop recording and then start it again once you're ready for everybody to join.
Okay. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, staff and group. All right, I've got you all on unmute right now, so if you want to talk to me, you can. That way I don't have to watch for you because this is all new for me. I'm not used to having an empty classroom. Plus, what we're learning today is brand new. I've not taught it before. I'm not really so I'm going to leave you unmuted unless you guys can chat and I think you're done. Somebody's chatting right now.
I would, if you think that you're not going to be talking for a bit, I would mute yourself because the background noise does affect that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Just mute yourself unless you got something to say. And I've got the chat box in the corner, so if you need to chat, you can type something to me and hopefully I can see it. So, all right, well, let's get rolling with this. So today is the contract to close class. Let me grab my water real quick. And so what I've got for you guys is actually a list of just kind of a checklist, and then I've got both the buyer side and the seller side. And on one of these, it's a little bit repetitive, but you'll see that when we get to it. The first page that I've got, and I'm gonna send all of these links to Lexi so she can send these documents out. I'll send them to her in just this regular PDF file, as well as, other than this first page, I've got them all in a Word format. So if you guys wanna go in and edit them to make it personal, you can do that. So this first page I just like because it's a great reference page. I know we're all digital, we've got all this technology that we can do, but I'm old school and I just kind of like having a piece of paper with everybody's information on it. So that's essentially what this first page is. I stole this from Paulina. It's not really what we're talking about today, but I just kind of wanted to show it to you, and it'll be part of the, actually this won't be part of the packet. I can send this to you. When I put it on Word, it didn't format correctly. So I just think this is a great thing for you guys to have something of this sort where you can see the seller's name, the buyer's name, who the other broker is, and you've got your title company information all in one fell swoop. So you don't have to go hunting for it, figuring out where that information is. Plus up in the corner, if you'll notice up here, it's also got all your dates that are important. The contract date, the close date, what the sales price is. So when you get that phone call and somebody's asking those questions, you've got a quick reference page that you can go to. All right, now down to the nuts and bolts about kind of what we're here for. I've got this, we're doing a contract to close, but we've got 4 pretty great documents that I just kind of amended a little bit that I think will go together, because I think this is kind of what you guys are looking for. So we're going to go through all of them, and 2 of them are not really the contract to close piece, but I also think that they mesh in really nicely with what we're doing. So checklist if you've got a new listing. So what do? I've got somebody that wants to list their property with me. What do I do? Okay, well, the first thing you need to do, which you should remember from the class, is at your first available opportunity, provide that Missouri Broker's Disclosure Form. And then, guess what? You've got to create an opportunity in command. And this is not a command class. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, but you've got to do that in order to be able to work with this client. If you don't put them in command, you won't be able to do any of the paperwork that you need to do. Prior to going and signing paperwork, get all the documents ready that you need to. So if you're going to go meet with this client, get the employment agreement ready, get the affiliated business disclosure, HSA. If there are CCRs or HOAs, get those together. Any paperwork that you think that you're going to need to go over with that seller, go ahead and amass it right now. Don't wait until you've got a 2 o'clock appointment and it's 1 o'clock, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to get all this paperwork to you. Go ahead and get it done now so you're ready to go whenever that happens. Schedule listing appointment. And if you'll notice, I left a blank here so you can actually utilize this checklist and you can fill in when's my listing appointment. So you don't forget what it is. Put it in your calendar, put it in your phone. Obviously, make sure you don't miss that appointment. It's pretty important. Create a CMA. Pretty basic. We've got to get that done in order to be able to talk to the client about what the value of their property is. And don't be afraid to do a couple of them to make sure your numbers are right. And you can show them different aspects of how you got to that point. Go to the tax records and make sure how they have the property deeded, how it's showing up with the owner's name in both the CRS, and in this case, honestly, it wouldn't hurt to go to RPR and make sure that it shows the same name in both places, because that way if there's a discrepancy, you can talk to the owner about it up front, and we can make sure we list the property correctly. If it's Steve and Mary Jane Trust, let's go ahead and list it that way versus having to go back and amend paperwork later. If there was a previous listing, I would go ahead and pull it. I don't necessarily want you pulling your information from that, but it's a good thing to have on file just as a quick reference to make sure that you're not showing 2,500 feet and they somehow showed 1,600. So make sure that you're not way off the mark. Fill in all those blanks in the listing agreement that you possibly can. I know some of them you may not know. I put the actual, sorry, I need to scroll down so you guys can see where I am. I actually put the contract, what am I looking for? The identifier number here, the residential 1010 seller's agency listing contract. So fill in as much of that as you can when you get there. Same thing with the MLS data sheet, which I'll get to here in a little bit. Fill out as much of that information ahead of time as you can, so you're not constantly writing things down. I want you guys to be able to take notes when you're with the client, but I don't want you necessarily doing your job when you're with the client, okay? Make sure that the seller's filling out disclosures. Because of our E&O insurance, you guys have to have disclosures on file with every listing. They have to fill out the 4 mandatory on the first page. And truthfully, that's all they have to do. But if you want your listing to look better, I would tell you to get them to fill it out as much as they possibly can. If there are other things that they need to attach, like a well and septic, or a lakes and ponds, or anything like that, go ahead and attach those as well. Somebody have a question?
Please, I posted it in the chat channel. Get this message out.
Mute yourself, whoever you are, I can hear you. If you've got a lake expanding that was built prior to 78, you're going to want to have that as well. As I said, preload as much of that information into Flex before you go as possible. And then you can actually print the data sheet, and you can have to check off the flooring and the countertops and the windows and those little details that you may not know, but you have the big stuff done beforehand.
Sometimes they start cutting things.
Use all of the appropriate places that you can to verify the data. If you've got to go somewhere and find out tax records, if there's a mapping situation, if there's subdivisions, if there's ARs, any of those things, go to as many resources as you can, mass that information at the earliest point you can. You don't want to be going and looking for these things later on, especially if you're ready to list the property. You want to have all of that information ready to go if you can.
All of this
Really silly. Make sure your client knows who their lender is,
but if you're
and hopefully what their payoff is. This is important information, not necessarily today, but when we get to that closing period and we're talking about a contract, we can talk educatedly about what this client is going to receive back as far as compensation once we close the deal and they pay off their loan, et cetera, et cetera. While you're there, you're also going to want to take videos and photos or schedule a professional. I'm looking as dead in the camera as I can. Schedule a professional to do this for you. It looks better, guys. Don't take them with your iPhones. If all else fails and you've got to get a picture on the MLS, take them with your iPhone and get it up. But make sure you've got good pictures on your MLS, both because it just looks better and it presents your property a lot better. It's a better representation for your client. So make sure you're serving that really well. And it kind of goes without saying, but make sure you don't have pictures with people in them or cars in the driveway or dogs in the background, anything like that. We want to show the property as neat, crisp, and clean as we possibly can. So we've gone to the client's house, we've gotten the information, we checked off the sheet. Now it's time to enter all of that information that we didn't already put into Flex. Now it's time to go ahead and do that. And we're all excited. We want to click that active button and get that property active and get that contract in. That's great. Fill out your Flex, hit save as incomplete, walk away from your desk for 20 or 30 minutes, come back and reread all of that information to make sure you put it in there correctly. Actually drive to the property with your driving directions. Those kinds of things to make sure that the property that you're putting out to the public is actually what we're offering, okay? Put in all of the disclosures and any of those things up to MLS. If you've got a survey, you can go ahead and upload the survey. If you want to go the extra mile, you can prepare a utilities page. And keep in mind, guys, as we go through this, these aren't mandatory things, all of these. Some of these are suggestions, like the utilities page. You don't have to have one of those on the MLS. Is it a nice thing to put out there so the buyer knows what kind of utilities they're going to have? Sure. So it's not a requirement. So like I said, I'm going to send this to you in Word so you can amend that. So if you don't want the utility thing on there, you can just take it out there completely, okay? Make the listing active. After you've proofed everything, uploaded as many documents and photos as you possibly can, make it active and get ready, hopefully, for phone calls. Send a copy of the listing immediately to the seller. You've proofread it, you believe it's correct. I want them to look at it and make sure that the property that they're representing through us is correct on the MLS. Optimize your listing on the Realtor, the Zillow, all of the extra places that you can optimize it. If you're looking for how to do that from me, please don't unmute yourself because I do not have a clue. That is a Christine question, okay? Create a booklet to put in the house. I don't think enough people do this. It's a quick print out the information you have, print your MLS, print your disclosures, any other attached documents that you have, put it in a nice book and set it on the kitchen counter. That way when the clients go through there, they look at it. And if you guys have shown property, you know if there's something on the counter representing the property, that's the first place your client goes. They go and look at that information immediately. So just have something on the counter. It shows better for your client. Put a lockbox on the property, and you'll notice, let me scroll down so you guys can catch up to me here. Put a lockbox on the property, and here I've got where you can actually put your lockbox number, your CVS code. If they want to give you the garage code, you can put that down there as well. I obviously wouldn't put that out to the public. If you're doing a home warranty, go ahead and order it. Go ahead and send, and if you do order it, go ahead and send the invoice to the title company right then. We don't know necessarily who they'll take that back. We don't know who the title company is at this point. We'll do that in a second. Submit all of your forms into Command, into your opportunity, and submit to compliance as soon as possible. I know some people tend to wait way too long to send their information in, and it really upsets our staff. So first of all, sorry staff, I'm going to be sending one later this week. Schedule your open houses. And if you don't know the best way to do the open house, you can go to the shift book for the 7th level service for the open houses. And I think that's a great thing to do. But go ahead and get that scheduled immediately, because hopefully in this market, the house is going to move quickly. And I want you guys to have the opportunity to have an open house and hopefully capture some buyers as well. So as soon as you get it on the market, get that open house scheduled. Email a thank you letter to the seller to include all the hot links that they're going to need. For MLS, if you're doing a listing showing update for them, go ahead and send them all the information that they're going to need so they can have all of that right at their fingertips. And it says they're set up the auto email for the listing activity for the client. Sorry, I can't see the TV across the way, guys. Email a link or flyer to everyone in your sphere. It says, hey, I got a new listing. Put it on your social media. Wherever you post those kinds of things, go ahead and do it. And guess what? This is a great excuse to make those calls and those contacts. Hey, I got a new listing in wherever. You know anybody that's interested. That's an easy contact for your day. Call your sellers at least every 2 weeks to give them an update, even if there's not anything going on. And honestly, I would tell you to do that probably even more frequently than that in today's market. But if the property's been on for a while, just make sure you're updating them. They want to know what's going on. If you think that they're not curious, you're wrong. They want to know what's going on right now. And be proactive about doing that. Even if you haven't had any activity, they prefer the phone call that says, hey, sorry, we haven't had anything going on. Is there anything that you think we can do to help this process along? But they prefer to hear that versus not hearing from you at all. Put a reminder on your calendar a week before your listing is to expire. Hopefully, the listing's already sold and that's not an issue. But I want you to be able to have that conversation at least a week before it expires about extending your listing or whatever our process is going to be the day this expires. I don't want you doing that the day before, because a lot of times the seller's going to feel rushed and it's just not going to be a good conversation. Do that earlier rather than later. And then again, make sure that you're following that listing renewal date, because if you need to extend it, you need to do that and make sure that you don't, sorry guys, that you don't miss it. We want to make sure that we keep that listing going if we need to. These next 2 pages will be in your packet. I'm not going to go over them. They're kind of a sample thank you letter for letting me list your property, as well as a what happens next, what's our process, marketing plan, and these things I think you guys really need to customize to yourself, but they're at least kind of some samples so you can see kind of an idea of what to do. All right, so we've taken this buyer this seller, and we've got them listed already. And now we've had a buyer come through that is ready to make an offer on the property. So we've received an offer. So now what do? Got a seller, I've got a listing. Great, we've got an offer. Now what do? Well, obviously, we need to present the offer to our client. You have to present all written offers to your client, period, end of sentence. Make sure when you're getting that offer from another agent that they have a pre-approval letter. And again, I hate to keep saying in today's market, but in today's market, things are moving very quickly. So if you are presenting a buyer offer, make sure you're sending it with the pre-approval letter. And if you're representing a seller, I would expect a pre-approval letter, because I don't want to accept your contract and find out 5 days later that you can't qualify for a loan. Because what have you done? You've taken my property off the market, you've pinned it, and you've wasted 5 days of my time and my potential marketing. So just go ahead and ask for those things up front to make sure that you're ready to go. If they're presenting a cash offer, same kind of situation. I want something from the bank indicating that they are going to have sufficient funds to close, including their closing costs, which usually if they're paying cash isn't an issue. If the terms of the contract that you've received are acceptable to your client, then obviously you're going to sign the line that says acceptance and send it back, and we're under contract. hate to say it, but rarely if ever is that going to be the case. It will happen, but more often than not, you're going to have an issue that you're going to want to counter, whether it's the price, the close date, the terms, whatever. So if that's the case, then you'll either initial the counter offer or the reject, and then fill out the counter offer form. Yeah, and here, if the terms are not acceptable, then you can use this MSC 2040 counter offer addenda. Review all the documents for signatures and initials, make sure everything is in the right place, and send it back to the other agent. Don't do verbal, guys. That being said, if you want to call me and say, if we're trying to negotiate, if you want to call me and say, hey, my client's going to do X, okay, that sounds great to my client, you still have to send it to me in writing. We're not taking that verbal contract to closing. So if we want to talk about it, that's fine, but send me actual paperwork about any kind of change in price, date, any kind of information. So we have presented this offer, we've counter offered, we've gone back and forth, we've all gotten on the same page. So it's been negotiated, presented, and accepted and signed by all parties. So what do we need to do? If there is an earnest money deposit, we need to go ahead and make a copy of that check and take that earnest money to the title company. And there is a form in .loop or Command or wherever that you can actually make a photocopy of that check on a piece of paper and have the title company representative sign it, which you should do because that effectively takes the earnest money out of your hands. Because I don't want you guys responsible for that money. I want somebody else taking over for it. Make sure everyone's got a signed version of the completed contract, the addenda and the disclosures. Change your MLS information depending. You've got 3 days to do that or you're going to get fined from the board. We don't want you to get fined from the board because if you get it the first time, the second time it costs you more money. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that all of the paperwork's been delivered to the title company. Buyer normally selects that, but I want you, even as the seller's agent, to make sure that the title company has the contract so things are rolling and moving forward as they need to, because your seller will need to present a clean title within 10 days as per the contract. So we need to make sure that title company actually has the contract. It is the buyer's responsibility to do that. However, again, just make sure no matter which side of the table you're on, make sure all parties have the paperwork that they need. Also send any information to the title company about the agency, the commissions, any other information that they need to know about you and the other agent in addition to the contract. If you're charging a transaction fee, they need to know that. If the seller intends to pay the contractors for repairs at the end, at closing, the title company needs to know that and have those receipts, okay? Check with the title company for a time of closing to make sure that we can get it closed. Enter on your calendars, reminder email, as well as the seller information. So make sure that everybody knows. Fridays are kind of a tricky thing, guys. Everybody thinks Friday's a great day because then we can move on the weekends, etc. It is great for that reason, but because of the amount of traffic on Fridays, A, sometimes you can't get in, and B, sometimes the title company, because of the amount of paperwork they have that day, the deed doesn't always get filed that day, which means it doesn't actually get filed till the following Monday. So not that that's usually an issue, but just something to think about, that everything won't be necessarily filed. Prepare your green sheet for those wonderful staff. Don't wait like some people do. Get it done, get it to them. Upload all your documents into Command and send to compliance to make sure everything's great. That way, if something's wrong, we can get it fixed now and not later on down the road. All of them are to be submitted to compliance within 3 days. And just so you know, sometimes compliance takes 2 to 3 days to get things done. So get it in there as quickly as you can. So that way everybody's on the same page. Verify the home warranty's been ordered. If your seller is paying for it or has been asked to pay for it in the contract, go ahead and get that paperwork in and get the invoice to the title company.
All right, hey, Don.
Yep.
Hey, I just wanted to put in a quick note for compliance when you submit. It should not take more than 24 hours. If it does take more than 24 hours, like nothing's happened to it, they haven't rejected or approved anything, send an email to the 369@gmail.com email and let them know. And then I don't think you can resend, but then that way we can let our compliance company know you need to go in and check this address. Okay.
And that's just something we need to know too, guys, in case they're falling down. I mean, they do a great job, but that's just things, we don't want things falling through the cracks. So thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, back to where we are. Verifying, confirm the date and the time of inspections with everybody. Make sure that the sellers know hey, you really aren't supposed to be here. Take your kids, take your animals, get out of the property for the 4 hours while the inspector's here. Some of them want to be there. They want to tell the inspector everything. If that's the case, say, hey, you know what, if you want to meet with him 30 minutes when he gets here and go over things with him really quickly, that's fine. I'll let him know that you're going to do that. But we really kind of need to get out of this way so he can do his job. So just try to get him out of the house if you can, guys. That's where they should be. So the buyer's done their inspection, and after that buyer submits the inspection notice along with all the reports. So make sure that as the seller's agent, you've received all of the inspection reports that have been referenced in that inspection notice, and review with the seller and decide what things we're going to repair. There's a tip on there that says, you know, if we've taken a lower price offer, then maybe we're not going to make as many repairs except those that might be required by the lender. If we've taken a higher price offer, maybe we've got a little more wiggle room to make some more of those repairs. That's a case-by-case scenario, guys. You're just going to have to discuss that with your seller. But the other thing to keep in mind is that there may be some repairs that have to be done in order for the buyer to get the loan. So that's just a conversation to have. I would have that one, honestly, when the contract comes in. That, hey, just so you know, we got to consider in this offer price, there may be things that we may have to repair, even though we're not making any repairs to the property. We're not going to do those inspection requests. So just make sure they're on that same page. Once agreement is reached on that inspection notice, so they're going to send a request, we're going to bounce back and forth, and once an agreement is reached, everybody signs, everybody gets a copy. Please only send it to your lender or your title company if there's been an adjustment in sales price or an adjustment in closing date, because they like to nitpick, okay, well, why isn't this being repaired? Why isn't that being done? And it raises more red flags than we need to get into if we don't have to. So if you've had a change of either price or sales date because of that, send whatever that addenda is, but try not to send those inspection reports and inspection notices if you can keep from it, because it just muddies the waters for both of those parties. And truthfully, most of them will tell you, don't send that to me because I don't want it in my file, okay? Check with the buyer's agent for the status of the appraisal. Excuse me, yes, the buyer's agent for the status of the appraisal. They've got a time frame to get that done. We want to make sure that they're moving on that time frame and not dragging their feet to get the inspection done and then trying to get out or anything along those lines. So make sure those things are being done. If repairs have been requested in the inspection notice, keep after your seller and make sure those things are getting done. And make sure that the seller's getting receipts of those so we can get that to the buyer to show those repairs have been completed. Again, whether that's paid at the time of repair or at closing doesn't necessarily matter. We just need to make sure we're getting the buyer the repairs done and getting them those receipts. If there are any open invoices, I said, go ahead and send those to the title company. Confirm again the close date with all parties and verify that the seller is actually going to be at closing. A lot of times the sellers will sign off early. They're already out of town, so they're going to remote close. Know those things ahead of time because we can't fix those problems the day before. We've got to send those mail outs and get those things back before the day before closing. So make sure that you're on top of your seller to know what's going on. Make sure that sellers talk to the title company about how they want disbursement of their funds. Is it going to pay off the loan? Is it coming directly to them? Are they coming to pick up the check? Is it wire transferred? Make sure that's been communicated to the title company so they don't have to come trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with that. Sellers are all excited because they're getting their money, they're moving out, they're moving on. Make sure they're changing the utilities, turning off the satellite service, the alarm service if necessary, all of those things that they're currently signed up for with that property, make sure they're unsigning up for them. I like that, unsigning up, good word, right? Call the buyer's agent and find out when they're planning to do a walkthrough, because your seller does not need to be there when the buyers are doing a walkthrough. And truthfully, unless they're doing it days ahead of time, it's best if your seller can have all their stuff out of the way when they're doing the walkthrough as well. So hopefully you're doing it right before closing and your seller's got all of their things out. Something that's not on this form that I just thought about is you need to keep after your seller about getting their stuff out of the house. The day we go to closing, the time we sign that document, we're signing that that property is empty and free of debris and personal belongings. So it's not on this list, so fill it in here somewhere, guys, to make sure you're keeping after your seller about, I'm gonna make a note too, about getting their stuff out of the property on time for closing. All right, back to where we were here. So verify that final walkthrough and again, make sure the seller's not there if you can. the title company should be giving you that closing document, the closing disclosure settlement statement 3 days before closing. If you're not receiving that, obviously follow up with the title company, because that's your opportunity to look at it and make sure all of the numbers look right. Are you getting paid correctly? Is the seller getting back what they're supposed to get back? Is the repair company getting their invoice paid? Is the home warranty being paid? All of those things, make sure that they're being covered in that closing disclosure, and go over that very carefully, because if we don't change it, that's what's going to be presented at the closing table. So review that with the sellers and make sure that what they're seeing is what they agree to. And if you find errors, make sure you notify immediately. If you're doing closing gift for your sellers, which is a great thing to do, get those ready so when we go to the closing table, we can present the sellers with those. Remind the sellers to bring their ID. We have to know that they're actually allowed to sell the property because they're who they say they are. So make sure they're bringing an ID. I realize right now, you're not supposed to attend your closings, but typically, please go to your closings. It's important for your client, even if your seller's not there. That way, if the other agent or the buyers have any questions, you are there as a representative for your seller. So please go to your closings, and please don't be late. Try to be early if you can. It just shows better for you guys. If for some reason the property's not going to fund immediately, you need to arrange how you're going to pick up your commission check. I'm sure you won't forget to do it, but make sure that that's on your calendar to make sure whenever it's going to be ready to go pick that up. Once you've got all your documents, you're going to scan all those documents, settlement paperwork, and upload it in Command for your final compliance. And I believe you're getting an email today with a video indicating how you can skip this next line at the top of the following page. Sorry, stop scrolling, guys. I believe now today you can scan in everything and send it to Rachel, and you will get paid, including a scan of the check, such that you don't have to turn it into the front desk, because we currently don't have anyone at the front desk. So just keep in mind that we've got a new procedure going with that, but typically what you would do, scan your documents in, sign in your check, and then you'll get your check later that day. Make sure you're changing your status in the MLS. That should be on your list somewhere. You know, if you've got closing, whatever, underneath that should be changed MLS, because that's an easy one to forget. The pending one, we always remember, because we're excited, we've got a contract, whatever. When it's sold, we get our check, we're excited, we turn our check in, we go get our check, we go put it in the bank, man, we're feeling great, we go to dinner, and it's 4 days later, and we've got a $100 fine. So make sure you've got a note somewhere to change that status in MLS to sold. Update your database and add that seller to your follow-up drip campaigns, whatever that may be. Make sure that you don't forget to start them over again, because just because they sold their house today and maybe you're selling them another one doesn't mean they may not run into someone tomorrow. And if you're top of mind, you'll get the referral. So go ahead and make sure that you've got them on the campaigns. Hey, guess what? Go ahead and add the buyer's name to your database as well. You know, we know their name, and I'm pretty sure we know where they live. So add them to your database, because you would be amazed, people outside of these four walls, how many people abandon their clients after they sell them a property. They're orphan clients. They don't have anybody to represent them. I think the stats are 70% would use the same agent again if they could find them, but most of them can't find them or don't remember who it was because they're not top of mind. So don't be afraid to go ahead and send information to that buyer. Take down your sign and remove your lockbox. If you've done this ahead of time, that's fine. Make sure that your lockbox and the key are at least there long enough so they can do the final walkthrough, but get your sign and your lockbox off, if not before the date of closing. And if you choose to leave a sold sign up, please talk to the seller or the buyer about that, because to me, I feel like that's a bit intrusive on the new homeowner to leave my sign in their yard. Some of them don't mind if that's your protocol and what you do. Just make sure you've communicated that with them. Prepare and send thank you notes to your sellers, and also ask for referrals at this point, as well as I've lost my train of thought, as well as recommendations to put on your social media and so forth. So anything that you can get positive from the seller right now, they're really happy with you. Strike while the iron's hot. Send that thank you note. But I also want you calling them a week after to make sure that nothing's come up with their process, that everything's still great, they're still happy with your services. And hey, by the way, have you run into anybody this last week that's looking to buy or sell when you were talking about how great your deal was? Did anybody else mention that they were looking to do that as well? Send a thank you note to the other agent. Even if the deal was really rough, That's a stand-up thing to do, guys. Hey, appreciate your time and your efforts in this transaction. It doesn't have to be, you're the greatest agent in the world and I loved working with you. You don't have to fluff it. You can say thank you for your efforts in this transaction and move on. But a handwritten thank you note will help you the next time you do a transaction with that agent. Promise. Farm that just sold in the immediate neighborhood. Again, these are suggestions, guys. You don't have to do them all, but you've just sold the property in this neighborhood. What if someone else in this neighborhood is looking to sell? Why wouldn't they want to work with you? Because you just sold a house in their neighborhood. So keep that in mind. In addition to calling the sellers the week after, I also want you to set a 1 month, a 2 month, or 1 month, a 6 month, a 1 year, and a 2 year check-in with them. Because 2 years, things may really be changing. In 1 month, they may have run into those people because their house sale is still fresh. And obviously you've got them on a drip campaign. But the 6 month, hey, it's been 6 months since you guys sold your house. How are things going, et cetera? Same thing at the 1 year. Keep it that top of mind in addition to your drip campaigns. Hopefully you had a decent transaction with the other agent. If you have, I want you telling the team leader or your productivity coach about that other agent and your experience. Because then guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna contact that agent on your behalf, saying what a great experience you had with the transaction, and hopefully adding to your downline. So if you've had a good transaction, guys, go ahead and let the team leader or the productivity coach know those things, because we can't follow up if we don't know what's going on. A couple things for the sellers to do a couple weeks before closing. If, again, as we talked about this, if they're not going to be at closing, we need to make sure that power of attorneys and mail out information and all of that is set up and ready to go. So as soon as the title company has the paperwork done, they can get that paperwork in process so we can get it back to close on the date we're supposed to close. Utility companies, the cable companies, we talked about that to make sure they're calling all of those places and getting all of that stuff turned off. Same thing about their insurance. Most likely, the sellers may be moving somewhere else and moving their insurance to the new property so their agent already knows, but make sure their agent knows and that they're not carrying insurance on that property after the day of closing. And cable and satellite and utilities and so forth. All right, that's the seller side. Do we have questions on the seller side before I switch hats over to the buyer side? Going once, giving you time to unmute if you need to. Going twice. All right, and again, I'm sorry for not scrolling, guys. I'm looking at my paper. I will have all these documents for you guys later today, so you can absolutely have them where you can look at them at your own pace. All right, so now we've got a buyer. Great, I got a buyer that wants to work with me. What am I gonna do? I don't know. So what are we gonna do? Well, first thing we have to do, same thing as we did with the seller, we've gotta create that opportunity in command, because we can't work with this client within command unless we create the opportunity and enter their information into our contacts. So you at least have to have them as a contact in order to create that opportunity. Same thing with the sellers, provide that Missouri broker's disclosure form at the first available opportunity, have them initial it so we've got that. Buyer's gonna sign the exclusive agency contract, and I've listed your 1080 right here for your reference. That's the one that they've got to sign. And yes, exclusive agency contract. I don't know why that finance addenda is on there, guys. I think that is I didn't get that out of the way. So scratch the additional finance addenda on that third one there, because that's not supposed to be there. Make sure your buyer's been pre-approved. If they haven't, get them to a lender, because as I talked about earlier, if I'm representing a seller and you're sending me a buyer that hasn't been pre-approved, and I got another offer comes in with the same money with the pre-approved buyer, I'm probably going over here because I know for sure they can get the deal done. So make sure that you're getting that pre-approval done for your buyer, and submit that along when you're submitting your offer. If it's an all-cash offer, as we talked about earlier, make sure that you are getting some kind of note from the bank indicating that they're going to have enough funds to close. And this is the time to kind of sit down and discuss the next 8 pages with your client. What's the process? What are we going to do from the point of us looking on the MLS at properties to the point of handing you the keys to your new house? What's the process? So go over that with them. Make sure the buyer has reviewed and initialed all of the relevant documents for this contract. The broker disclosure form, affiliated business disclosure, inspection providers, MLS detail sheet. Make sure that you use the public version on the MLS detail sheet. It's called private for a reason, because that's only for us agents. So make sure that you're printing out the public version of that. Seller's disclosure, home warranty, if the seller's providing it, make sure that you're doing that. We'll get to if the buyer's doing it later. Lead-based paint, well and septic, any other riders, any other documents attached to the MLS, and any other mapping, floodplain, anything like that that you need to have, go ahead and make sure that we've sent that along with the offer. So we've got our offer. Nope. Here's what I did wrong, guys. These pages are together. So I've gone from writing an offer to, all right. I apologize, I'm gonna fix a couple things on this form because there's a couple things out of order that just, again, first time I've done this, guys, so bear with me. So we've got all these documents, we've got the contract prepared. So make sure you call that listing agent to let them know you're preparing an offer. Ask if there's anything else going on to make sure that we know we're in competition, because if we are, that may change our strategy in making our offer. Go ahead and prepare that CMA, and again, this is kind of out of order, we should have done this before. We need to prepare that CMA to help them off, to help make the seller, excuse me, the buyer, determine what kind of sales price we're going to ask for. Are we asking for concessions? Are we asking for warranty? What kind of things are we going to ask for? And that CMA will help do that for you. That's one of you calling me to tell me that I'm out of order. Make sure that we get that closing date with the buyer that they can actually achieve. Hopefully it's, you know, within reason, but make sure that they know that if this is the date that we're going to close, we need to get this done. Go ahead and prepare your offer to purchase with all of the details we talked about right here on the first page. Sorry, scrolling down. Make sure that you've got the buyer's initials and signatures in all the correct places, as well as all the blanks filled out correctly in the contract. That's not this class, but if you don't know where to fill out the blanks for the contract, we've got people that will help you with that. If earnest money is required, go ahead and get that earnest money deposited with the escrow agent once you've sent the offer over. Remind the buyer that they need to be available by phone so you guys can talk about whatever response we get from the seller, and that truthfully they really need to be able to sign off on whatever documents and response we're going to do pretty immediately as well. Call the listing agent, let them know that you sent them over a contract. I know it's all technological these days. We're probably going to notice on our phone. Call me anyway and let me know you're sending me an offer. I would rather you do that than me not see it and it's 6 o'clock tonight and you call me and say, so what about my offer? I didn't know I had it. So make sure that you're kind of keeping up with that, okay? Wait for the response for the contract from what you've sent. You know, the buyer's going to be itchy, so make sure that you're letting them know, hey, I'm waiting to hear. I'll let you know as soon as I hear something. And again, it needs to be in writing, especially for first-time home buyers. Make sure that even the verbal negotiations that you may do with a seasoned agent, go ahead and get those in writing, because the buyer needs to see all that and understand the process, okay? And again, even if you and I negotiate that we're going to do 100 grand with whatever, it still has to be in writing to be valid. Okay. And depending on what the seller says, we as the buyer can either accept their counter, we can counter it again, or we can just reject it and move on. Because at this point, if they haven't met our terms, then we don't have to accept what they're doing. After the contract is signed, make sure that everyone has a copy, including title and lender. And again, as the buyer, those are really your responsibilities to get them those documents, and just do it as absolutely soon as possible so they can get their process underway. Lender can get appraisal order and title can get title work started. If you've got the earnest money check, make sure you made a copy of that and put it in your compliance folder, because you'll have to have that. Post to your sphere and your social media that you've got this property under contract, even though it's not yours. You know, hey, I've got these buyers that are buying this great house. You need to utilize those kinds of things to help get you guys more business. If people know that you're active and you're selling lots of things, it's going to help. If you think about how many Facebook posts we've had in our internal page and external pages the past week or so, you know, I know things are going on in the world, but I put 3 under contract today and I got 2 more writing tomorrow. People notice those things. So make sure that you're promoting yourself as you do that. Go ahead and prepare your green sheet, send it to the MCAs, make sure you guys can get paid. Confirm with the lender that the appraisal's been ordered. We've sent them the paperwork. Follow up a day or 2 later to make sure that appraisal has actually been ordered. And mind the time frame of the contract. We teach you to go ahead and extend that appraisal time frame out. But if you haven't, if you've got 25 days to get it done, make sure that that process is getting done in a timely manner. Discuss with the buyer what we can expect from home inspections, what they're going to look for, what they're not necessarily going to find. You know, what they're not gonna, not necessarily find, what they're not gonna report. They're not gonna tell us, you know, about the crack in the window that we can see ourselves. Some of those things, so make sure they understand that process as we go into it. Also, and go ahead and order those inspections, whether the buyer does it or the buyer instructs you to do it. Make sure you get those inspections ordered as soon as possible, because you also have time frames there that we have to mind to make sure we get it done. During this inspection period, your buyer also has to get their insurance done. So make sure that your buyer has contacted their insurance company and that that process has begun as well. Notify the listing agent of the time and date of the inspection. And again, as we talked about on the seller side, request that the seller, the kids, the dogs, all of those things be out of the house while the inspection is going on. And go ahead and get that CVS code from the agent in case you need to give that to the inspector. I prefer you guys be there to meet the inspector and let them in. And that way, if they need to know anything specific, you can answer that question. If your buyer has anything specific that they want checked, you can report that to the inspector as well. And normally what I do is find out, okay, you think it's gonna be 3 hours? Great, this is the buyer and I'll be back in 2.5. Bring the buyer back, that way they can go over things with the inspector as well. I think that's more in the contract to close, so. If the septic is being tested, make sure that lid's getting uncovered. Our contract does not have a stipulation that the seller has to do that. It's technically the buyer's responsibility unless it's requested of the seller. So make sure, as you are representing the buyer, that that septic lid is getting uncovered. Okay, so when the inspection is complete, we're going to review all of that information with the buyer. Hopefully they've met us at the house and gone over some of these things with the inspector and have a better idea of what is urgent and what is not urgent. And that's the other reason I like taking them with the inspector, because we know sometimes we get those reports and they've got all this information on it and it makes our buyers kind of crazy. The inspector can help talk them off the ledge that that's not a big deal. I would fix it whenever you guys move in. This is a big deal. We need to pay attention to it. Okay. You're going to make your request, obviously, on this inspection notice here. You're going to send that over with all the inspection reports that you have referenced to the listing agent. Then the seller obviously can agree to fix it. They can they can amend what they're going to fix. They can refuse to fix anything, or they can give you some money at closing. So their response will bounce back and forth until that's done. And just like on the seller side, only send this to the lender and the title company, the lender and the title company, if we've had an issue with changing the sales price or changing the close date. Okay? Send the termite certification to the title company. They're going to have that for closing. Just go ahead and ship that to them to make sure they have it. Order the home warranty, and then send the invoice to the title company. Even if the seller's doing it, check with the listing agent to make sure the home warranty has actually been ordered. Enter any information in all your documents into Command. There's one I knew somewhere. I left Command and I only put a single M, and there it is. I found it. And submit for compliance. And then if you get any responses, obviously correct any issues that you have. As we go along, we want to make sure we've made those inspection requests. Kind of talk to that listing agent. Hey, how are the repairs going? We want to make sure those repairs are getting done and getting paid for, so we can actually send those receipts to our client whenever they move in. Hopefully you've got the title search back at this point. Review that and make sure that is all clean. Set the closing date with the title company. I've left blanks in that one for you guys, so you can go ahead and write in, you know, specifically what the close date and the title company in case you need to come back and reference it here. Notify everyone of the close date. Title company will obviously know. Lender, buyer, seller, listing agent, make sure everybody knows the time and date and location of that closing. We talked about the seller checking with the insurer, or the buyer checking to make sure they had insurance. Make sure you're following up with your buyer that that agent has gone out and inspected the property and agreed to insure the property, because if not, we need to make sure we're getting something done about that. Make sure the buyer is contacting the utility companies, the satellite, and all those things to make sure they get looked up whenever they move in. If there's a propane tank, make sure that we're talking to the propane company about whether or not we're buying the old gas from the current people, whether we're getting a new tank. Make sure all of those things are taken care of before you get to the closing table. You don't want to get to the closing table and say, you had your utility switched, right? No. And we don't want them without power or water for days at a time if we can keep from that. If for some reason we know we're not going to close, go ahead and extend that close date with an addendum. Hopefully you don't get to that situation, but you will have that happen. And especially now, you're probably going to have that happen. Another thing I don't have on this document, that's really more of a contract issue, but that I want you guys really to be mindful of right now, are the 2 COVID riders that MAR just put out, because they're a protector for both the listing, the actual sellers, about whether or not they want people in their house, or whether they don't want people in their house, as well as on the buyer side about what kind of protections they want in the event this deal does not go through. So just be mindful of those. If you don't understand those, call me. We can talk about those on a different note, but they're not in here, but I want you guys to be mindful of them. Again, once we got that settlement statement, review it with the buyer, make sure that all of those numbers look right for the buyer. Make sure their lender agrees that this is the amount of the check that we're planning to bring to closing, and it matches the number that shows on your paperwork. Remind the buyers that whatever money they end up bringing to closing for closing costs, whatever they may be paying for, it's got to be a certified check. It can't be a personal check. So they've got to have that, and it's got to be, again, don't have them getting that necessarily the morning of closing when we got a 9 o'clock closing. If it's that early, have them go get it the day before. Walk through the property, to me, as close to closing as possible with your buyer to make sure that the repairs have been done correctly. And hopefully you've already verified that. If there were major repairs done, you may even want to send back a re-inspect. I think I've got that on the contract to close list as well. So just be mindful that those repairs have been done ahead of time. But if you're finding out at the final walkthrough that something that you thought was finished was not finished, I'm looking over here like this door wasn't stained right or whatever, then you need to report that to the agent immediately. If everything is good, everything's the way it's supposed to be, the property's cleaned out, it's empty, it's ready to move into, have your client sign the final walkthrough form and move on. Go to closing. You'll upload the HUD settlement statement and make your check to command. Again, this one says you're going to deliver the check to the office, which actually now you're going to deliver it electronically. Add this buyer back into command into a campaign. Even though they just bought a house, they may know other people that are looking to buy a house. So they may not be a seller for you for a while, but they should be a good referral source, because hopefully you've done a good job for them and they're all happy and fuzzy and great feeling about you and want to send you more people. Send a referral to the team leader or productivity coach about the agent on the other side if you had a good experience. Or find something good about your experience and tell those two about it to make sure that we can follow up with them. If you've got a closing gift for your buyer, have that ready. I apologize, guys. I thought these were in better order than they were. I've read them ad nauseum for about 12 hours, and I think they just all ran together. I will format them a little bit better, put them in better order for you. Make sure you got the handwritten note for the buyer. And same thing we talked about with the seller side. Handwrite a note for the agent as well. Even if the deal wasn't great, hey, I appreciate your hard work on this deal. Sign off and be done. Post to your sphere and your social media, hey, I sold another one. Anything to get your promotion out there that shows that you're the agent doing the job. We can farm to the neighborhood that we just sold a property in their neighborhood, even though we had the buyer, we were still responsible for selling the house. So same thing as we did with the seller, set that 1 month, and I want you calling them 1 week after as well, but set that 1 month, 6 month, 1 year, and 2 year reminders in addition to your drip campaign to follow up them specifically about this sale that we had. Request those referrals from your buyer. Again, strike while the iron is hot. And as we talked about before, all contract needs to be sent to compliance within 4 days. So make sure that you get those things uploaded as quickly as possible, so the staff doesn't get cranky with you like they do with me. All right, contract to close. And I think this one is going to repeat some of the stuff, because now that I look at that one, I think I can blend them together. So I will work on it. But let's go down to the final document that we have here, the actual buyer contract to close list. So we've presented, we've negotiated, and we've accepted an offer. We've got all the forms and contract addenda must be signed. Everybody gets a copy of those documents. Email the executed contract to everybody that needs to have it. Closing company, lender, and I apologize, some of this is going to be repeat, but I'm going to go through it anyway. Make sure you're communicating all those things with the people that need to have them. Go ahead and get that closing date set up with the title company. Email all the contract addenda to the buyer's lender to make sure that they've got it and they can move forward. Earnest money deposit we're going to do. Enter all the documents into command for compliance. Discuss with the buyer what to expect from the inspection and order the inspection, and determine whether we're going to do a whole home inspection if they're just inspecting a few of the issues. Most often we're going to get a termite inspection. Do they want a radon? Do they want a mold inspection? Is there well or septic? And again, if there are, who's going to uncover it and pay for it? And if we're having any specialists, so if we get the whole home inspection and have to have that roof, we may have to have a specialist go out and look at the roof. Make sure they understand the process and kind of the timing about what we're looking for on that. As we talked about, make sure we notify the agent and that the seller is absent during the time of inspection. Get that CBS code. Same thing with insurance. Oops, sorry guys. Insurance. Should we attend the home inspection? I talked about this. I like to show up and let the inspector in and cover anything we need to cover. I like to get out of his way, and I like to come back with my buyer right towards the end so we can both go over things that the inspector wants us to know for sure. When it's complete, we're going to review it with the buyer. We're going to list any major repairs that the buyer wants repaired on the inspection notice. And once we deliver that, then we're waiting for the seller to respond. Again, they could agree, amend, reject, or give us a monetary adjustment. Once we agree on that, enter all of those documents into Command for compliance. Again, we need to have those in within 4 days. Order the home warranty. Well, this is really a repeat of the last one. Order the survey if we're doing one. So you won't do that on all the properties. If you are doing one, make sure you get that ordered as soon as possible because those are not an immediate process. Those take a little time to get done. Check your compliance review, make sure that you've corrected it and resubmitted it if you need to. Check with the lender on appraisal, make sure your timeframes are in there. Make sure your lender understands your timeframes. Hey, we got to get this done within 25 days or we don't have a loan contingency deadline anymore. So make sure, or loan contingency anymore. So make sure that the lender is aware of your timeframe as well. I would go ahead and email that buyer a checklist a couple weeks before closing just to keep them in mind that you have to have an ID. You're going to have this certified check. The closing is at this time. Just the bullet points of things that are going to happen the day of closing, because rest assured your buyer is going to feel a little scattered the day of closing, especially if it's a first-time home buyer, because this is all new to them. They don't know what to expect. So go ahead and send them something to kind of prepare them for that. Make sure that your buyer is attending the closing. If not, make sure we've got all of that information set up prior to closing, not figuring that out the day of closing. If we've got a close date in the contract, we've got to perform by that, because if we don't, then we are in default. As we talked about, make sure they're bringing certified funds and an ID. Schedule the final walkthrough. I want you guys doing this as close to the end as possible. Check with the buyer's lender, see if there's anything else that's going on. Make sure that we are all on track to close on this correct date. We're going to get the closing disclosure from the title company. Closing disclosure from the title company. We're going to review that with our buyer to make sure everybody's on the same page about what we're doing. Get your closing gift ready. Attend the closing. To me, even if your buyer's not there, I want you there in case something comes up. Get your commission check either then or later. Scan all that information into Command. Deliver to the front desk, or in our case now, electronically. Update your database and put that buyer on the drip campaign. This also indicates that you can add the lender and the title company and those things. I think the lender is a great idea. Hopefully you're working with your title company pretty regularly. And it also says the client from the other side. We don't necessarily know where that client went, but if you do, absolutely put them on a drip campaign to make sure that we're keeping up with them. Because just as with buyers, they may be abandoned by their agent as well now that they've sold the house, and they're just out here floating without any representation. Refer that person to the team leader or the productivity coach. Update this person on your anniversary card list. You should have one of those going, date of sale, birthdays, those kinds of things. Make sure you're getting a reminder to call them and say, hey, happy 1 year anniversary on your house. Write the thank you note to the buyer. Write the thank you note to the other agent. Again, regardless of how the transaction went. Call the buyers about a week after to follow up and make sure everything is as it should be. If it's not, do what you can, what's within your power to try to help them. I don't want you guys going over and unpacking boxes and spending money, but if there's something that you can help them facilitate that hasn't gone well for them, by all means do that, because that's going to help with your referrals. And again, the 1 month, the 6 month, the 1 year, and the 2 year reminders specifically about this sale. And then we've got a checklist down here kind of for the buyers, and this might be something that you can send out that a couple weeks ahead of time. Some of these things. How are we paying for the home inspection? Are we doing that at the time? Or are we doing that at closing? Have we selected that title company? Do we need that power of attorney or mail out for closing? Have we done the termite inspection? Have we sent that where it needs to go? Do you want a copy of the survey or a plat of the property? If so, we need to get that done immediately. Have you obtained your homeowner's insurance policy? Do you want a flood policy? The title company will be able to tell you if we're in a floodplain, and whether your insurance agent will tell you whether or not we need a flood policy. Not any of those around here, so probably won't run into that a whole lot. Call the utility companies to set everything up. Call the cable companies and TV, arrange for certified funds, and make sure that the buyer has the certified for the time of closing. So again, my apologies about the buyer side. I honestly think a couple of these got intertwined. So I think I'm going to squish the buyer all into one document, and then I will send that out later. So apologies for the roughness of the first time, but now hit me with your questions, concerns. What do you think I missed? What are you struggling with on your closings, getting people to close, etc.? No one? Bueller? Bueller? Okay, well, I will get these documents amended a little bit better and get them over to Lexi, and she will put them in all the places that you guys can find them. So I appreciate whomever was here today, and have a great day, and stay safe, stay clean, and wash your hands. See you guys. Bye.